All right, babies, let's do this. Babies, let's do this. Flow and stress. How instead of feeling bad, I look at what's happening. Oh, this is a good one. This is a good one. This came to me in the morning. Before I left the house, I woke up and I was thinking about the flow of the day or stress. So, in all honesty, I've mentioned it before. Of course, I did. I don't know why I feel like this is becoming a bit repetitive. But how do we normally consider stress? Uh, if anything, man, let's look at the scientific thing that stress does to us. I'm not going to dive deep into it, but we become tense. Tense. And how would we describe flow if we were to describe flow? Right? Water is not tense. A dancer can't be tense when he's dancing. A musician can't be tense when they're playing music. A singer can't have a tense voice. In fact, a writer can't be tense when he's writing. There has to be some kind of pressure, but it doesn't necessarily mean tension. And I would I would say that our our lack of experience with flow basically removes our potential positive experience with stress. So, what the fuck am I trying to say? I don't know. Based on how I used to engage with, I want to say, I, I used to, maybe that's a better story to be told. I never used to engage with stress. I never. I was the kind of guy that something happened, it's fine, put it to the side, move on. Move on, do something different was really the case. So I literally built 9 companies over a course of 9 years and 10 months. And the last company I closed was the first company I started. I closed it a year and a half ago, I think. A year and a half ago. It was like 6 months to 9 months after I came back to Lebanon. I was like, you know what, man, forget it. It's not mine. I can't convince myself with anything. But what I used to do was when shit hit the fan, which happened often because I'm not dealing with it. What happens is I think that's what people call shutting down. But the reality is, I wouldn't shut down. I kind of like would open up a different part of me that deals with life differently. Okay, it's funny because I'm writing an article about the slots in our heart and how they're forced to be opened, and how normally when you open something new, a new interest, a new inquiry, a new kind of like observation, a new outlook, a new just form of being, you're starting with not necessarily a clean slate at times, because sometimes you're creating something new in yourself in order to develop, but other times you're opening something that's been there for a while and hasn't been tended to. And so I never used to deal with stress. And I think because I never wanted to acknowledge that I was failing or under stress or any of that shit. But stress does tense you up. And effectively, what happens, or at least how I see it happen to me, was every single time something didn't really happen the way I would have wanted it to be, or didn't reciprocate the effort I was putting into it. Granted, it wasn't the most efficient or effective effort to be placed. But what effectively started happening was I'd kind of like leave it where it is and jump to something else. Unresolved things will eventually become stale, will eventually start fermenting, or will eventually start kind of like smelling bad and just becoming toxic. That's basically it. If you take kitchen scraps and you wrap them in plastic and put them under the sun, they're going to turn poisonous. If you throw them on the ground, they're going to dry up and just kind of like become nutrients, but not effective nutrients. If you dig them and put them underground, again, organic kitchen scraps. And then life will take its course and they are processed by the soil and everything like this. And effectively, the flow of life is always directed by the stress that we're going through. Because stress is the first thing that's kind of like marking the fact that the flow is no longer there, right? Because the minute you're starting to look at your own self and realizing you're stressed, that means there's something that you're doing that's wrong. That means there's something that's happening that's not harmonious with whatever it is you're attempting to do. Be it a movement, be it a job, be it a work, being a process, any of these things, there's something missing. And at times like these, character is tested because how you deal with it actually matters. Because a lot of the times you can just convince yourself with something and then the stress goes away, but you're probably omitting something bigger for yourself in the future. Because the reason you started doing something was for a reason. And I see it a lot in people, and especially friends of mine, because like I left Lebanon for like 9 years and 10 months. And before that, I was going to Dubai and all that kind of stuff. But when I came back, I saw a lot of these people that once had ambitions and kind of looked at life and wanted to do stuff, fully and perfectly satisfied with whatever, wherever they are, which I think is a beautiful thing because that is strength of character. It is very much like you integrating with something in order for you to be at peace. For me, I couldn't find peace in something like that. Anytime I'd feel stressed, what I started doing, and I don't know if that's a superpower or not, I started going to a different thing and attempting a different thing to avoid stress, period. But what happened is every time I tried something new, and again, like I went from I went from a hospitality company to real estate and real estate management, and I did even like cars and logistics for a while. I opened a slaughterhouse, which didn't work, thank God, because like I love animals. But like at that point, I was only thinking of money. And then I tried to work with farming and farmers, and I got like a cacao farm at one point. I don't know if I got the paperwork with me here, but like no, I remember we signed the lease over 3,000 acres, man, to plant cacao. But like, naturally, nothing actually works when you're not fully, when you're not flowing. Nothing works when there's no flow to it. If it's always a force that has to like make something change, it would always find a way to stop. It's friction. It's Newton's second law of motion. Like if it's not moving without anything stopping it, it's going to continue moving. But if there's always something stopping it, there always has to be a stronger force pushing it. And by the end of it, I just kind of like opened a consulting company and started just like working with NGOs and working with like the UN in order to kind of like build more, I want to say, projects that make sense to the culture that we're in instead of just trying to impose first world country like ideologies and first world countries' principles in a place that doesn't even have the same climate. It's just horrible. But anyways, so it's just legitimately different. Like went from hospitality to manufacturing to production to farming and logistics, just like all these industries because I was trying to avoid stress. Or because every time I get stressed with one industry, I go like, fuck it, and I jump to something else. And it's only till the end of it where it all caught up with me, and suddenly, like every single thing that was causing tension, the minute I found myself relaxed, I noticed all the different parts of me that have been kind of like held together by that tension, and naturally never held in the proper way because your body as well has to flow. And that day when I woke up, I think if I'm not mistaken, I woke up to a beautiful kind of like stretch where I felt like, the whole of me is kind of like engaged in a beautiful way with itself. It didn't feel like I was interfering with my body. And it got me to think about all the kinds of stress that we normally hold on top of on top of ourselves. Our body holds physically, our mind holds mentally, and it gives us anxiety and all kinds of stuff. And all these things that allow us, that end up exploding. And as far as we think we've reached avoiding them, what we've effectively done is drag them with us among a lot of different things. And the reason I wrote this down is like here is how instead of feeling bad, I look at what's happening, which literally is like anytime I feel stressed, the first thing I do is I start in a very conscious way observing my day, my reality, my approach. It's not my thoughts. My thoughts are not the problem. It's everything that has been created by me that's causing the stress, that's allowing my thoughts to kind of like tell me, hey man, what the fuck? We're not happy. We're not liking this. And once I look at my surroundings, it's very weird. I become very much at ease because ultimately, instead of always looking to do something that's in front of me, that's away from me, sorry. Because normally, most of the time, we're reaching our goals, we're trying to do different things. The fucked up part about that is you have one eye looking at your goals and one eye looking in front of you. It basically brings me back and allows me to kind of like see the day and like do the things. Like the simplest thing yesterday that like made me kind of like sleep better was the fact that I did the dishes. And I did not know, I could not see how much having the kitchen basically and looking messy. I cleaned the dishes and I washed the entire thing, man. I scrubbed the oven and it's shiny and beautiful and I was so fucking proud of myself. But like, just that small thing gave me relief from almost everything around, everything else that's been happening. So yeah, stress is literally just a message for us to get back into flow. Oof, that was a beautiful story. Thank you guys. I mean, like, it's beautiful for me because I got to like relive it in a different scenario and re-explain it and just develop it differently in my head.